I'm live. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Okay, so I'm live again. I love these live sessions and I love helping people. So look, if you want some free help and you want free advice, right, then just go to septictank.co.uk and you'll find loads of free videos like this. You'll find loads of good products. You'll find me. So you can ring me and I can help you whenever you want. Okay, so that's what I love. I love septic tanks. I've been doing it 20 years. I install them, I repair them, I sell them, I fix them, I maintain them, whatever it is, right? That's what I do. Okay, so what are we talking about today? Well, what we're talking about today is, what if you've got a high water table? Now, that's a very, very good question. So let me give you a scenario here, right? Let's say that is the land, and let's say this is your tank. Okay, and let's pretend, right? Let's say that the water table comes up to here, okay? So let's say that is the water table. All right, and let's say that's the hole that you're going to put your septic tank in. All right, so let me put a septic tank in here now for you. All right, so number one, if I was putting a septic tank into an area where there was a high water table, I wouldn't put an onion septic tank in. Remember the onion tanks? The onion tanks, how much space have I got here? The onion tanks look like that. Yeah, and so you put them in the ground, but what happens is, so let's say that's the water table there, okay? They just pop out the ground. You'll put it in the hole, you backfill it, you do all the things. You come next morning and there it'll be sitting on top of the lawn. They're a nightmare, those onion tanks are putting in places where there's high water table. Don't do it. Just don't do it, right? They're useless. All right, so what I would go for would be a low profile septic tank, a septic tank, something like the bullet septic tank, something like that, right? They're very short, they're very stubby. In fact, this is what they look like, okay? So let's say this was me and this was your garden, I was putting it in. There you go, so there's the hole, okay? All right, so I dig the hole. Okay, there may be water at the bottom of your hole. Don't worry about that because as we've already ascertained, we've hit the water table. And so you could put a pump in there to keep sucking the water out. But if it's a high water table, it's just going to keep flooding in and it's a waste of time. So what I would do is this. I'd have the digger and I'd lower the tank into the ground, right? So let's just do this now. So, all right, so let's say this was the bullet septic tank, right? All right, so that's what they look like. They look something like that, okay? They're somewhat look like a submarine, but you get the point, okay? And so let me just tidy this up a bit. All right, so let's say that's our shallow, low profile septic tank. Okay. All right, so we've put it in the hole, and as soon as you put it in the hole, it's probably going to bob up and down a bit because of the water underneath it, right? So underneath, you're going to have the water. So what I would do, as one example, there's loads of different ways to do it, right? I would have the digger here, and with a digger bucket, very gently. But if you go for like the bullet septic tanks, you can see them on my site, septictank.co.uk. They're not fiberglass, they're really, really strong, high density propane plastic, I think they're called. And so the digger bucket, I would have the digger bucket here, like that, okay? Just touching the top, just to keep it down, right? You don't have to break the neck. The neck's, that's a bit of an over-exaggeration if I'm honest, but sometimes you have to put an extension neck on there, but just for argument's sake. So I would keep it down, right? So that water will be displaced, but it just stop it popping up. Then what I would do, right, I would then run a hose pipe to the tank and put it into the tank, and then I would fill the tank with water. And so by the time it gets to about 3/4 full, that tank will not go anywhere. Flaming hell, there'll be like 30, 40, 50 tons of weight and more in that tank. So the water will be displaced by doing so. Okay, so but the tank itself, you can rest assured, would be sitting on the bottom. All right, so that's your tank in the ground, and I'd probably keep the digger bucket on there as well. And then what I would do, right, you've got so many ways to do this, but let me give you one example, right? I would get a cement mixer onto site. I'd either hire one in, but it's going to cost you a lot of money if you're getting pre-mixed concrete coming to site. You can do it, and some people with a budget, it's no problem. So the cement mixer would come. I'd either do it manually, and so I'd mix a certain ratio, depending on how wet it was, of gravel and sand and cement. And then what would happen is you'd actually drop it 360 degrees around the tank. So that obviously it would fall through the water, but it would be concentrated, it would be dense enough there, it would actually fall to the floor. All right. So you then, all the way around it, 360 degrees, all right, you'd actually put like a concrete blanket around it, right? So the water is keeping it down. You can even have the digger bucket there to stop it, you know, if you're worried it will still pop up. And then that cement, over the course of a day or 2 days, listen, in wet conditions, the job always takes 2 to 3 to 4 days more, because you're dealing with moisture and things take longer to set. But eventually that will set like a rock around that tank, and the concrete will fuse to the side of the tank, and it'll be like a massive anchor holding that down. And then once that was done and that was set, I would then backfill over the tank again with concrete. So basically you've put a whole concrete blanket around the whole tank there. Any displacement of water that, you know, that's you've squashed up or whatever, you can use a pump and suck it away. But once that's in there, it will also act like a barrier, a wall. So the water table will still be here on the outside, yes, exerting pressure, be water underneath it, and there'll be water here, but the weight of the tank, the resistance caused by all the concrete will just displace the water naturally, because there's only so much water pressure and tension, you know, in that particular area. Now, okay, so that would be the tanking. I'm saying, putting this in really basic terms so you can understand it, but that's typical. There's 1,000,001 ways to put a tank in wet conditions, but I'm just giving you a really basic overall view. One size doesn't necessarily fit all, but this is a good place to start. Now, you're probably wondering about the Soakaway. You're thinking, oh no, you know, we've got a high water table. But on these bullet tanks, right, the outlet pipe is really close to the grass. So let's say this is the grass here. So let's say that's the grass there, okay? Oh, you can tell this is live, so let me just turn that off. There we go. All right, so that's good. That's good. So at least you know it's live, right? So that's your grass, right? Oh, I know that's the hose pipe. We finished with the hose pipe, but so that's your grass. So the outlet pipe on these bullet tanks is really shallow. So this could literally be about 1.5 foot, 1.5 foot below the grass, right? That's how shallow these tanks are. And then your Soakaway would be above, almost, because this kind of area here, right, is almost like the topsoil, right? This kind of area here that I've crossed off. And so it's still going to, even if it was 0.5 foot above the water table, right? The point is that water is still going to drain away naturally there. And you see, what you have to remember is this: people get really, really worried if their water table is 4 to 5 foot below the grass. Well, let me tell you this, right? A good indication of the water table is where the nearest stream or river is. So let me just give you an indication. Let's say this is a house on the hill here. All right, you have to forgive my drawing. It's more like a noddy house, I know, but you get the point, right? So let's say, all right, that's a house on the hill, and the septic tank and the soakaway's here. Now, if this is half a mile away, if it's quarter of a mile away, if it's 5 miles away, right, your septic tank and soakaway cannot defy the law of gravity. So in this kind of instance, it's impossible, right, that the water table would be up here, right, and the lowest point would be down there. It just doesn't work like this. If anything, right, it would slowly taper and make its way towards, right, because look, if your water table was that high up, right, you imagine you get millions and millions and millions of gallons, right, of rain falling from the sky every year, and they're all hitting this, right? Now, if you live in a lake, if your house is surrounded by a lake or a boggy kind of pond-like kind of environment, then that's a very, very good indication that the water is very high up and it ain't going anywhere, right? But if your garden or your land or all those millions of gallons of rain's falling onto, and your land is typically dry, right? Obviously, it may be a bit sodden after it's rained. You can guarantee that with a low profile tank and the soakaway, right, even if the water table is high, that water is still going to drain away, and water drains away to the lowest point. So in this instance, the water table is only going to be relatively almost as high as the top of the river or the stream there, you know. Otherwise, you know, if that wasn't the case, it would be like that, the water table, right? And it's, you know, it would have to defy the law of physics, you know. And if that was, you know, the direction of the water flowing in this particular direction, then, you know, unless it's going to turn into a tsunami or a flash flood. So what I'm trying to say is, right, unless you live in a hollow at the bottom of a valley, or you live right next to a stream where all the water's passing down under your house, under your land to the stream, then in 90% of cases, having a water table high up is not an issue or a problem. You'll find that it's consistently draining away. And you know, without going on and on and on about that, the point being is, right, if you're struggling and you have got a high water table where you live, right, just put in a low profile bullet septic tank, right, because they're shallow, you can put them concrete around them, and your soakaway will be really high up too. So, you know, I've tried to put it really basically and succinctly and in simplistic terms, but look, if you're worried and you want some free help and advice, right, about putting your septic tank and your soakaway into land where you've got a high water table, then give me a bell, right? Or just go and buy a bullet tank and a soakaway kit from my site, which is septictank.co.uk. So listen, thank you very much for watching the video. I'm a bit tired, to be honest, so I'm sorry if I'm rambling on a bit, which I do sometimes as it gets later into the day and my brain's not in gear as it should be. But listen, thank you very much for watching, and you take care now.